back to Weekend Breakfast with me, David Bull. The time is 23 minutes past 7. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Lots of lovely messages coming in this morning. Good morning, both. I'm with Dr. Rennie Hunderkamp. Good morning again. Good morning, both. Thank you for such a great show. Must listen whilst out on my early morning dog walk in the Norfolk countryside.
Lovely. It's cold.
It is cold. In answer to your question, I have now taken out private medical insurance. I'm not rich by any stretch, and it's a massive outlay. You see, I think this is going to happen more and more. This one says, hi, David, read tortoises on Barbados. Oh, yeah, this is, what was his name? Jonathan, who's 190 years old. Happy birthday to you, Jonathan, on Friday. There's an attraction of giant iguanas in Barbados, but inside you met with this constant noise, about 500 tortoises, the majority copulating noisily.
And they bang shells.
All right. Or flipped on their backs. How do you know so much about copulating tortoises?
I had tortoises growing up, and you hear them. You hear them. All you can hear. And then you have to explain to your children what the tortoises are doing.
What were they doing? Playing leapfrog?
Satisfying aim number 2 in life.
Did you say, though? Did you actually say they're playing leapfrog?
No. I'm a doctor. I just say it as it is.
Okay, very good, very good. I would have said leapfrog. This one from Eric Dunn says, people will unfortunately die on the 15th and 20th of December whether nurses strike or not.
Well, that's true, of course, because people die all of the time. But more people may die.
Yeah. This one from Ken Little, and I disagree with it, but the Tory party policies means the poor will not reach an old age unlike the tortoise you talk of. The Tories are killing people, not nurses or other NHS staff. Look at who is dead and dying from the Tory policies. That's simply not true, because actually funding for the NHS has never been higher, 10.3% of GDP. As we know, it's not about the money, it's about the management of those hospitals and where that money is going.
Where it's going, what we do and how we do it.
Exactly. That's why it needs radical reform. John in Lincolnshire, good morning to you, one of our regulars. My other favourite show of the week is this one, After Yesterday's. Keep it up. Thank you very much indeed. That's very kind. And this one, I will just ask you this. Any doctor who prescribes paracetamol needs a reality check. But we do prescribe paracetamol, but we have been urged not to.
We have been urged not to, and I can understand if you've got somebody who's crippled by osteoarthritis and they're getting through 100 tablets in 3 days or whatever it is, the maximum dose, not 3 days, but it's very quick, it's a week, then I can understand. Although, having said that, paracetamol is 50 pence in Boots, it really is.
It is.
So yes, I agree, and I try not to. And I think an analysis was done, and I think it was in your area actually, in Suffolk on Norwich Hospital, said that if Norfolk, that if they didn't prescribe paracetamol, they could employ something like 5,000 new nurses.
Is that right?
It was ridiculous, I have that, I'll find it.
So look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. It's very important. By the way, I rather like this one as well. I don't know who this is from. Hi, David. Tell Christo he looks like he got dressed in a charity shop during a power cut Ian in Glasgow. Thank you very much indeed. I shall actually print it out and put it on his desk just to annoy him. Thank you very much indeed. Right, let's have a look at this morning's papers. Rick Panesar joins us this morning, who's a PR specialist and broadcaster. Very good to see you.
Good morning, David. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you very much indeed. So, papers. Did you find much in the papers?
Well, there's a lot in the papers. There's a lot of stories that resonate throughout a lot of the papers. So I've picked out a few, and I think we should have quite a fruity discussion about the whole thing. So, starting with the Observer on page 4. So this is basically looking at a new coal mine that may be opening in Cumbria. It's looking to get the go-ahead this week after a public inquiry. And it just sort of reeks of a lot of finger wagging that we made. We just had handed the presidency over from COP26 to COP27, and Alex Sharma, has come in and really has gone against this. And I think it just firstly sends the wrong signal over our stance as the UK and Britain on green issues. And I think there's a little bit of, we're wagging our finger to a lot of other countries to stop using coal and fossil fuels and things like that. And I think it doesn't look good for us.
So you're against it?
I am, actually. Yes, I am. I think, there's a lot of talk about how, jobs can be created and stuff, and talking about levelling up. But I think a lot more jobs could be created by developing more greener industries.
Well, but the issue here is we have a massive energy gap. We're talking about rolling blackouts over the winter, and actually we can't generate enough electricity because successive governments haven't built any nuclear power stations, which we're now starting to do. So we have a massive problem. When it's not windy, then the wind turbines don't work. When it's not sunny, then the solar power doesn't work. We don't really have tidal power. So for me, actually, I think this is the right thing to do, and we should have more coal mines as an abridge. If we then have a goal, which is to say, if you want to get to net zero at some point, fine. But as an interim measure, surely we have an open. Is it an open cast mine? I assume it is.
I'm not too sure if it's an open cast mine. Coal mining is my expertise on this particular one. But that said, I totally understand you may want an interim gap just to bridge our energy needs, but I do think, we can open up nuclear power stations. I know there's a lot of controversy.
They take a long time to make. 10 years to build. Even the SMRs, actually, the small modular reactors, they're quicker, but they're not that quick.
I know, but David, we need to start somewhere.
No, we do, but that's the point. And here's the dichotomy for me, which is that you are essentially saying we don't have enough electricity, but we're pushing everyone into electric cars. How are we actually going to make sure that there's enough electricity to power all of those electric cars?
Well, we may take some time in order for these changes to happen, and they will happen gradually, but I do think that opening up a coal power station is sending out the wrong signal. Whilst everyone's not going to buy an electric car tomorrow, this will take a gradual time to happen as well. It really does send the wrong signal, considering that we are wagging our fingers at other nations as well to reduce coal and their reliance on carbon.
Yeah, but maybe that's the issue. We shouldn't be wagging our fingers at the other countries in the world who want to develop in the way that we've developed to get the fantastic life that we have, and they don't. Who are we to wag our fingers at these countries and say, we've done this and it's great. We now live till we're 82. We used to die at 49, but you can't. So maybe the issue here is not the coal mine, but wagging our finger.
Well, this is the issue here. We tend to wag our fingers a lot. I think we've had a long history of sort of wagging our fingers and telling people what to do and what not to do. So whilst that may be the case, there is scientific evidence to prove that, going down... There is some, but nevertheless, that going down using carbon and fossil fuels is going to be detrimental to our planet.
But in the short term, people will die because we haven't got enough energy. So I don't want pensioners sitting in one room with a one-bar electric fire on because they can't afford the electricity. That's the bigger issue for me.
No, that is very true. But, we can have wind farms. We can have onshore, offshore wind farms. Whilst the wind may not blow, then the sun does shine.
Do you want a wind turbine near you?
Do I want a wind turbine near me? To be honest with you...
Right next to your house?
Right next to my house. I think there are opportunities and there is land and there is...
Answer the question. Stop being a politician. Would you seriously, and the reason I asked this, there was an article yesterday, I think, in one of the papers saying that people have bought shares in a wind farm, and as a result, their electricity has actually come down considerably. Would you consider having a wind turbine in your wherever you live?
In my local vicinity? Yeah, I would consider it, actually. The answer to your question, I'm going to be very brutally honest with you. I think aesthetically, they're not the most pleasing things to have right next to your house in your back garden. But that said, I think there needs to be a little bit of give and take here. And I'm firmly in the corner of the wind turbines.
All right. And do you know how environmentally friendly wind turbines are from their build to their destruction?
You're in a pincer move.
In 30 years' time. Because they actually only last about 30 years. They kill lots of birds and bats along the way. You're not even allowed to build a house if there's one bat in the area. But wind turbines are actually quite damaging to the environment.
I have heard about the bats, but you've got to sort of balance out, which is the lesser of the two evils.
Sure, but then environmentally, you have to scrap those wind turbines and everything that went into them in about 30 years' time, and they're quite environmentally difficult to dispose of.
No, that is very true, but there is a lot of research that is going on at the moment to look for other alternative forms of electricity.
I just feel that we don't talk about that enough. We don't talk about, what's happening to build an electric car and the children in Africa that might be dying to mine our minerals, to do all of this stuff. We don't care about those children. We only care about these children here. And I don't think we look enough at how environmentally damaging all of this stuff might be.
Can I just say that we've had so many messages on this already. So this one from Dead as a Dodo saying the Cumbria coal mine is the right thing to do. Alok Sharma can cry me a river. He's the wrong type of Conservative. Also, this one from Louise, who's one of our regulars as well. Good morning to you, Louise. Louise says, tell Rick we already use coal, but we just ship it in. Surely we want British coal.
No, I think this is a global issue here now.
Well, it is and it isn't. It's about the UK security, energy security.
It is, but at the end of the day, the UK, we are like two fleas fighting on the same dog. We've got to, we've got to look at the whole planet as a whole, and for the good of humanity, I think this is something that we should look quite seriously at, and we should look at alternative forms of generating.
I don't disagree with that, but I mean, this is another great one from Brexit Duck saying, ask Rick how green electricity can run my gas boiler. So that's the point. That's the point, is right at this minute, and particularly in the country, and I got told off earlier for not mentioning people in the country, they use oil because there is no gas infrastructure in the country at all. So my house, for example, I have an oil tank, which I have to fill up when it costs a lot of money when you fill up. 3 blobs. I fill it up. When it gets to 3 blobs, I then fill it up. But I can only afford to go to 5 blobs, not 7 or 8 blobs. People will know what I'm talking about in the country. But the point is, we're not there yet. We're not there yet in terms of infrastructure. So surely this is a good idea as a short-term measure.
No, I do not agree with that. I fully believe I'm going to stand with my argument on this, regardless of what Brexit Duck, beg your pardon, says. I think, our reliance on fossil fuels has been something that has been ingrained in us over many, 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 many years.
Well, it has enhanced our lives.
I was about to say, it also helped the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, it did, but, we can also see the result of us wanting to progress so far and so forward.
I'm going to let you move on. I will just end with this one, by the way. This is from Pablo, who says every wind turbine and solar panel built today will be scrap metal by 2050.
Yeah.
Really?
I'll let you move on. Let's move on. Another story in The Observer. This is about e-scooters.
Yes, this is looking at e-scooters. Now,
we might agree on this one.
There's a lot of confusion about the rules around e-scooters, and I'm also very aware that there's a lot of controversy when it comes to health and safety of people and pedestrians, but I don't see why we cannot have the infrastructure built in to use e-scooters safely. I mean, it'll be a much cleaner way to travel. It'll ease the burden on the public transport system as well. And, if you have a look at some of our European counterparts, they've actually really embraced the use of...
So just in terms of the e-scooter, I'm so confused what's legal, what isn't legal now.
We are all confused, and the story that I was reading is actually going on about people wanting to use e-scooters. So, as I understand it now, you are allowed to use an e-scooter on private land.
Yes,
but
you are.
This is not the common misconception. Sorry, not misconception. The conception that people have.
But you can't use your own e-scooter on public highways.
The only scooters you can use are the higher ones.
Now, let's go back to the higher ones. Where I live, where I live in London, is full of scooters all over the road where they've littered them.
It's awful.
It is awful.
So where I live, and I live in London too, that not only is it e-scooters, we have line bikes lying across pavement.
I've seen those.
So I don't understand, why can't they sort that out? Because surely the whole point when we had the Boris bikes was that it went into a dedicated rack.
So it's all been rushed out so quickly that I've spoken to Barnett about the line bikes, and what they tell me is that they've commissioned the bikes as a trial, but they didn't opt for the option that included docking stations because it was obviously more expensive.
Yeah.
So they're just being dumped everywhere.
So let's just do a really rubbish trial.
I think probably the same with the e-scooters.
So the e-scooters are also trialling at the moment,
yes.
but it does make sense, particularly with the Mayor of London, who is determined to price everyone off the roads, that if we do want to move to a truly sort of sustainable transport model, you've got to allow e-scooters, haven't you? You
have, but I also think, and this comes to cycling as well, and I know you'll get millions of emails about this, they need to be registered properly. People need to have number plates or whatever.
Would you have number plates on cycles?
Well, we have to do something. Firstly, road users have to pay for using the road, as far as I'm concerned,
including cycles.
But we've just cost hundreds of millions to put in cycle lanes for them that you and I are paying for as road users. But that's a different argument. I think e-scooters, as you say, they're a great way of getting around, and I do agree with that. But they can hit people. They can be dangerous. There needs to be some responsibility. So they need to be registered, and we need to know who's driving them.
Yeah, I think there should be some regulation around it. You know, you can't have people going rogue on e-scooters. But again, the benefits far outweigh the negatives.
I mean, I always look at them and think, what happens in the rain?
Exactly. And that's the difference between us and our European counterparts. And that's why they've done so well, that their weather is not as bad as ours generally.
But in London, particularly, it's always raining.
Yeah. Well, not always,
well,
but
a lot of
it is a problem in winter, I think. And I think that's a problem for lots of things in London. Riding mopeds.
Well, I was going to say, riding mopeds and bicycles and whatnot.
Let's move on to the Daily Star, shall we, about Pele.
Right, Pele. So this was on page 5 on the Daily Star, amongst other newspapers as well. I just think with everything going on with the Football World Cup, Pele, his message, I am strong with a lot of hope. I think Pele is a great example and a great personality and ambassador for the sport as well. Whilst, I'm not sort of a massive, big football fan or anything like that, but I thought with the World Cup going on and everything, I think we can all learn a lot from Pele, and I do think that a lot of our footballers, past and some present, have had some very questionable behaviour, and this is why I think the Pele is an example of a really good sports person, an amazing footballer who had an amazing history and won the World Cup 3 times.
Is that right?
I might say. Well, he won the World Cup 3 times when he played for Brazil. So so he has a very illustrious career, and he's done a lot of work for his sort of communities and stuff where he's come from too. I just wanted to take a moment to have a very fitting tribute to an amazing person as well as a footballer as well.
Because Brazil is a hugely impoverished place, and that's why lots of footballers do come from there, because it's an aspiration that actually gets them out of poverty. I mean, there are still children living in drains in Brazil. And he has done lots and lots of charity work to help those children, and in the favelas, which are drug-ridden as well.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of footballers who come from privilege in the UK who get paid thousands and thousands of pounds for kicking a football around, but still behave very questionably.
Well, indeed, but there are also some really good people. Marcus Rashford, I could single out as someone who's done a great job. I campaigned for many, many years on free school meals for children, and of course, I didn't have the clout that Marcus Rashford has. So, but that's when you can use fame and fortune and notoriety to actually affect change, and then it is great change.
No, absolutely, and I totally agree with you. Marcus Rashford is again another an amazing ambassador for the sport, and I wish there were more. There were more Pelés and more Marcus Rashfords.
Indeed. So we were this morning. Rennie and I were saying that actually the papers are pretty empty this morning. There's a lot about the Royals all over the papers. What are they saying about the Royals?
Well, what are they not saying about the Royals?
Well, that's kind of what I got.
So the royal family. So I'm going to look at this from sort of a PR angle. There's a lot of hearsay, whatnot, what could have been. But let's have a look. The brand of Windsor. So you have the old guard. The Queen sadly passed away. Prince Philip had passed away a little bit before that. You had all the shenanigans with Prince Andrew and whatnot. So this was like the new guard is in now. So, we've got a new king, Prince William, Catherine, and, this is a new chapter, and it's just gone so wrong. This was like the first big set play. They had a gathering where the Queen Consort was hosting organisations and females who were helping people with domestic violence. The Earthshot Prize was on. They were out in Boston, and it just went wrong. It pained me to see it happen and play out.
Well, we talked about this yesterday. The whole Susan Hussey thing, I think, is disgraceful. The whole thing about Ngozi Fulani, there's more to that than meets the eye. The more I read, the more I realise that is not quite what it was made out to be at the beginning, and I feel desperately sorry for an 83-year-old woman who has given great service to this country, who's basically been hounded out of office, who's been bullied. I'm very uncomfortable with that. And also, just in terms of William and Kate, I think behave in an exemplary fashion. And if you look at them today, they're doing a sterling job, only to be sort of rugby tackled by Harry and Meghan.
And they don't get to say anything in return. Don't forget that. All of these people, Susan Hussey, William and Kate, Charles and Camilla, they have to take all of this and just grin and bear it.
Well, let's have a look at this. So the timeline of events that happened. Now, Lady Susan Hussey, I actually do feel a little bit sorry for her, right? Even as a person of colour. I don't think she intentionally had any malice.
No.
But there has been so much learnt behaviour and ingrained unconscious bias that I don't think she realised the actions or the way she was conducting herself.
But to be fair to her, Ngoni Falazi turned up in indigenous dress, right? Even though she was born in this country. So
what's wrong with that?
No. So therefore, nothing's wrong with that at all. But the question, therefore, is where are you from? Is absolutely pertinent, isn't it?
Brilliant question. Now, take it from me as a person of colour, I get asked this question a lot.
But why? You're dressed as you would in England.
No, because you're wearing it. I understand.
But I understand that too.
Right. But, you know, where are you from? It's a fair enough question. Honestly, it's a fair enough question. I think the line of questioning afterwards, you know, if someone says to me, and I talk about this to a lot of people, I say, look, I hope you don't mind me asking, but I was wondering, where's your heritage from? Or what's your background? Or what is your... That was the way to... Not about, I'm smarter than you. When I know, where are you from? You know, and then to actually, you know, move the dreadlocks out of the way. It's very disrespectful.
That I do agree with.
There's a whole way of the way they behave. It's almost like...
Look, it was inappropriate. It was inappropriate.
There was a bit of superiority there as well that I...
But she is an 83-year-old woman, and I know plenty of 83-year-olds in this country who are not part of the royal family, who possibly would have done the same thing. Now that's not to say it's right.
Yeah.
It's not to say it's right, but it is contextual, and it is, because they grew up in a different era where they would have asked those questions, where people of colour would not have been so prevalent in society.
No, that is very true. But that said, you know, I do believe, you know, this age thing, once you're trying to put it into context, we can't let people get away with the whole ages thing. Whilst, you know, there was a time, it wasn't like Lady Susan Hussey hadn't seen people of colour before.
I don't think any of us are disagreeing with you. I think what we're saying is the hounding and bullying of her thereafter is the wrong bit.
Right, now the hounding and bullying thing. So what was, you know, the palace's reaction to this? They came down hard, and you know, they had to, because they were worried about what this would do to brand royal.
Yes.
So I think maybe this could have been handled slightly differently.
Yeah.
Maybe I think instead of just taking Susan Hussey out of public life and just cancelling her straight away, maybe they could have talked to her. Maybe she could have just said, "Look, I've understood." I wouldn't go as far as saying a public apology per se, but just a little bit of understanding.
Yeah.
And, you know, keeping her in a role and a little bit of learning.
Bit of education,
a bit of learning.
Rick, I'm going to keep you where you are. We have to take a break for the moment, but if you don't mind just staying on over the break. Also, I do have to say a very big, warm welcome, good morning to Rabina, who is listening in Braintree. Rabina, it's so wonderful to talk to you yesterday. Thank you very much indeed. After the break, Rick will finish the paper review, then we'll take your calls, your thoughts and your messages. This is TalkTV.